How's it going, everybody? Good evening, good morning, and good afternoon, wherever you may be in the world. I think this is what, my third live stream of 2023? Because I actually thought this was the first one until I went back and looked at my content and saw that I had at least done two straight pool live streams. Oh no, never mind. This is not. This is now my second live stream that I've done for APA pool league matches. I did a wrap up of the fall 2022 session back at the beginning of the month. And so here we are at the end of the month, and I'm finally going to review two of my APA matches that I have here for the spring 2023. It's not very often that I find myself being able to play lately, as I try to toggle my rosters around to make sure that everybody gets their equal amounts of playtime, as well as making sure that I create rosters that just make sense, that allow us to have the best possibility of winning, to qualify us for the playoffs, and then try to win playoffs to qualify us for cities, and so on and so forth. Now, before we get started, I got to give a shout out to my sponsors, Onboard Sportswear and Taom Billiards. And for Onboard Sportswear, if you're not familiar, they are the company that makes the jerseys for the Mosconi Cup. And this is one of the jerseys that I had them made for me with my own little logo on it. And as you can tell, because of my background, I do like red. Red is my favorite color. And so we have black and red with the onboard logo on the sleeves. I have my logo here on the left side of my chest, as well as on my left sleeve, because whenever I extend my bridge arm, then my logo will be shown here on the sleeve. But the main thing here is having some sort of logo here on the back. The last time I did an APA review, I actually had one of my APA team shirts, and it was a picture of an 8-ball with like scientific atom symbols around it, because the team was called 8-Ball Physics. So if you think you might be, if you might have interest in wanting to purchase shirts like this for any of your leagues, whether it's APA, TAP, BNEA, NABA, BCA, or whatever, be sure to check out their website, either at onboardsportswear.us or onboardsportswear.com, and you can use my discount code LilChris10 and get 10% off your purchase. Max Duran, thank you so much for watching me on Facebook, and thank you so much for the follow. I really do appreciate it. Okay, let's see here. Let's give a couple of shout outs to people that are in the chat. Jesse Holman, good to see you. Peter B, Travis Wilson, how's it going? And Ron Ham. I currently don't see anybody chatting on Facebook, but the stream is early, so we'll just have to see who happens to pop in. Ooh, everybody. Thomas, how are you doing, my friend? Let's see here. Well, you know what? Thomas here is a local of mine, and he is going to be featured in one of the matches that I have to review here. So, what we can hopefully try to accomplish here, because what I try to do is not only commentate on what you're going to see me do and have me voice my thoughts as to what I was thinking at the time, but I also try to commentate what I believe my opponent might be trying to do. And if my opponent makes a mistake, or if I even make a mistake, then we as a collective can still try to figure out what me or my opponent, could have done better in the situation where a mistake was made, whether it was a missed shot or whether it was a series of shots that led up to the missed shot. Just something that hopefully that both myself, my opponents, if they happen to watch the match, or any of y'all, if y'all happen to be struggling with the same type of issues that you will see in any of these matches, hopefully the advice that we come up as a collective can also help you out as well. That's the main reason why I do this stuff. It's to allow everybody to see how I play in a live type of environment, against an opponent, and you actually get to watch me see, you get to see me practice, attempt to execute the things that I showcase on my YouTube channel, whether it's kicking systems, breaking styles, shooting styles, etc., etc. So this should be fun. And Thomas, you couldn't be any more correct because it's getting cold here in Texas. We're starting to get some ice. A couple of places I know have were closed down for the day because the roads. I guess the roads were a little dangerous. I don't really know because I haven't left my house all day since I pretty much work from home. But I do know it's cold outside. I think it's getting cold. I think it's supposed to be getting colder. Don't know if tomorrow is going to be any better. We're just gonna have to wait and see how things turn out. So we'll just have to sit, wait and see. Okay, so is there any announcements that I have besides making sure that I give my due diligence to my sponsors? I don't think so. As y'all may have saw or seen from one of my latest videos, I finally got my table refelted. And I've quickly learned that I need to break that table in. I need to break that cloth in. So I'm probably going to start filming just like some quick break and run walkthroughs. I'm not gonna just like try to break and run a rack. I'm gonna try to break and walk through running 8-ball racks, 9-ball racks, 10-ball racks, and I might even do just a single rack of straight pull. Very similar to how Shortstop on Pool does his rack of the weeks of straight pull instructions. But he does his in a retrospective style as well, where he looks at a recording and then commentates what he thinks he's doing on how he gets through it. I will do mine more kind of on the fly and commentate while I'm attempting to run the rack. Just so that I can make sure that I'm putting in the time to wear the felt in. I'm already starting to notice how the movement of the cue ball is a little bit different. I get to see the cue ball kind of slide around more than I'm used to. So certain shots where I try to spin the cue ball off the rail a certain way doesn't exactly spin the way it's supposed to. I did demonstrate at the end of the refelt or the reclothing video how the cue ball can peel out in place when you do power draw shots, and that's usually something that I'm not familiar with. I'm usually adjusted to the cue ball almost instantly taking off, and that's how I judge the speeds of the hit. So it's going to take some time to adjust, to break the table in and so on and so forth. So just be looking out for that kind of content. Okay, let's see. Jesse Holman, you're wanting to know how do you get tips from Adam or how do you get tips from Taom? Well, I mean, I'm currently, if I chose to be, since I am sponsored by them, I can actually acquire their products at a dealership type price, meaning that I can distribute them myself. So I've talked about this in previous live streams where I don't know if I want to do that, meaning that I don't know if I want to attempt to make a business out of being sponsored by Taom and help distribute their products. I certainly want to help distribute their products by talking about them, advertising them. I showcase their stuff. I have a video where I just recently put a Taom Fusion tip on my Predator Icon 4.5 so everybody can see what the tip looks like and see how I'm able to shoot with it, what it sounds like, at least coming through my sound setup and whatnot. And, based on that demonstration, is it good enough for you to want to give it a try? But considering that I have to attempt to manage a YouTube channel, I have to manage my APA teammates and my BCA team. I have to attempt to manage life, and I have to attempt to manage my 9-to-5 job. I just don't really know if I want to attempt to take on a secondary business and be able to, distribute the products. I still think about it from time to time, but I'm just not entirely sure. Now, but to answer your question, Jesse, is there's plenty of other distributors that are out there as far as the tips are concerned. You can obviously attempt to order from townbilliards.com. It's just that that website is overseas. So therefore, when you do the conversions from euros to US dollars, and then you have the shipping costs that you're gonna have to pay for the product to come from overseas to the United States, which probably would be a little bit more expensive than if you were to attempt to buy within the United States. So I can certainly suggest that you might check out Amazon. I think Amazon has a couple of the Taom tips for sale. And then, of course, check out Siebert's or any of the other billiard websites. I think Pool Dog is another popular one, but we certainly do have quite a few vendors here in the United States if you want to be able to purchase any tips and then try to have your local Q Smith guy be able to put them on for you. Because right now, I would certainly at least recommend the Taom Fusion. I'm still playing with it. I eventually plan on doing a follow-up video on like what I truly think about the tip. It's a tip. I'm okay with it. I'm able to maneuver the cue ball around with it just fine. And you know, what I do want to attempt to compare it to a Taom soft tip, because the only personal criticism that I think I can give the tip is that the tip is harder than a soft tip. So I can at least hear the difference in how the tip hits the cue ball and the sound that it actually makes. It's very much more of a knocking, high pitched type of sound versus more of a low pitched thud type of sound that I actually prefer, like when I use softer tips. So the Predator Victory Soft or the House Soft that I have on my Black 4-5, the sounds that those tips basically produced, I prefer them better than the high-pitched type of knocking sound that you can get out of a medium tip or out of a hard tip, let alone like a phenolic tip. But before I go make any true type of comparisons, because I don't really want to say like, you know, is Predator better than How, or is How better than Taom, or is Taom better than all of the above, I want to be able to compare the Taom Fusion tip to a Taom soft tip. Because to me, that seems like a fair comparison where I can actually show, you know, do I prefer one over the other? I don't really want to try to cross-reference and compare different types of products, because even my criticism might be different from everybody else's criticism. But if I were to attempt to compare the same products, I think that seems more fair. So, long-winded answer, Jesse, but I hope that at least helps you out. You know, until I tried the Taom Fusion, I used to always play with medium tips. Kamui was the Kamui Clear was the last medium tip that I used on my Viking Q before I got my Rebo shaft and started to appreciate softer tips better than that. So it's really just going to depend on, you know, what strikes your fancy. Do you like soft tips, super soft tips, medium or hard tips? It's really gonna depend. I just currently have a preference of softer tips now after switching to carbon fiber and trying out soft tips for the first time. Can I still shoot with medium tips? Of course I can, and you see me do that with the Taom Fusion tip on my Icon 4.5. Okay, let's see here. I don't think I see anything else from here. So why don't we go ahead and roll on into the first match? So let me switch on over to this. Here we go. Okay, so in this matchup here, I'm going to be playing up against a skill level 6, and it is Thomas that everybody saw here in the chat. So I am going to ask that everybody be respectful of the gameplay, whether it's my play or whether it's Thomas's gameplay. I do this stuff so everybody can learn. I certainly don't mind if I get trolled, and I showed this in one of my last straight pool live streams. You can troll me all you want, and based on if I ever come to a breaking point, I'll just kick you out of the stream. That's fine. But do not troll any guests that I have on my platform, and let alone don't troll any of the viewers. We're all here to have a good time. We're all here to learn, and we're all here to try to get better. Now, so since Thomas is a skill level 6, he is going to be going to 4, and I'm going to be going to 5 here. So let's see who is going to get to break first. Well, it looks like Thomas definitely hit his lag just a tad bit too soft. So let me just go ahead and just fast forward to my break. Oh, and before I forget, let me just put a little asterisk next to my name to indicate that I am the breaker. So Each time Thomas misses, that's going to increase the inning count that we have on here. Yeah, and we can see this here that I actually wasn't supposed to play Thomas. It's just that we weren't entirely sure where the 7 that I was supposed to play had ended up. Now, I do want to explain this because I've talked about this multiple times as to how I'm actually breaking an 8-ball. I've got a very old video of mine that I did almost 3 years ago where I have two different styles of, I demonstrate two different styles of breaking. One which I call the classic break, and then there's the moving the cue ball all the way over to the side rails and hitting the ball that's in the second row because you're favored to try to make the 8-ball on the break, which is beneficial in APA because making the 8 on the break without scratching is considered a win. But the third style of breaking that I've been doing lately in 8-ball and 10-ball is the pop break. And I had explained it to a point to where when you watch my cue, you can see that the tip of my cue is like almost all the way at the very bottom of the cue. And what I would do is that I would have it at a high elevation to where my elbow is actually really high, so that, or my cue actually is very high to the cue ball. And what I used to do that I talked about in previous live streams was when I pull back for the final stroke, as I'm coming forward, I would drop my elbow and try to drive right through the cue ball and still hit the cue ball like this, but with some sort of elevation after I've dropped my elbow. And sometimes I would get a very successful pop break. The cue ball would just hit the rack, pop up into the air, and squat right into the middle of the table, provided, of course, no balls come around and knock the cue ball around. But I also found very quickly that I wasn't able to put in enough time, enough repetitions to be able to master that type of movement, because that's a lot of movement to do in a break. You know, elevated cue, pull back, drop your elbow, and stroke forward at the same time. And the break just wasn't consistent. It wasn't consistent enough for me, or I wasn't able to consistently get it down to my liking. So I started doing some experimenting with the pop break, and that's what you're going to basically see here, because now you can hopefully see in the video that the tip of my cue is not all the way down here like it used to be. It's actually fairly low on the cue ball, but it's also still to where I have a very elevated cue because I bridge my fingers very high. So like pretty much like if I were to drop my elbow right now and show you where the tip of my cue would be, it'd be all the way up here. But if I were to bridge with a leveled cue, and then if I start with a level cue, this is where the tip of my cue would be, and then all I do is pick up my elbow so that way the tip of my cue drops down to where I'm hitting about here. Now what I'm going to end up doing is I'm going to leave it there. I'm not going to drop my elbow. I'm going to pull the cue back, stroke through, and the moment I detect that I hit the cue ball, that's when I'm going to start dropping my elbow so I don't drive my cue into the cloth of the table. So watch how that actually happens. So hopefully you can see how my cue still kind of finishes up, but that's me when I try to detect. The moment I strike the cue ball is when I try to drop my elbow so that way I can not hit the table. And you can see here what ends up happening is I must have dropped my elbow too soon, not when I actually struck the cue ball. Why? Because look at the cue ball. It popped back like I expected, but then tried to just run its way forward. So that tells me that I must have dropped my elbow too soon. And I actually struck the cue ball somewhere like this. So since I got the pop that I wanted, I didn't want the cue ball to just blast its way forward the way that it did. I wanted it to stop right here in the middle of the table. So I hope that makes sense because you're going to see that breaking style more and more. All right, so let's examine the table here. What did I make on the break? I see the 1 ball. I don't see the 2 ball. And here's a 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So it looks like solids. And then 9. I think this is the 10. Here's the 11, 12, 13, 14. So it looks like I'm solids. So when we look at this table, the first thing I have to establish before I even decide to shoot anything is, do I feel like I can run the table? And so far the answer is yes, with one little problem. And that's this guy right here. because he only goes to this pocket. But that means that if I were to get some sort of position on this one ball, I could shoot the one ball here into the corner pocket and then try to get position on this ball to where I would shoot this guy up here. And then I could shoot the 7 either into the side or the corner as well. Once I figured all that out, that's when I proceed to start building a pattern, because clearly I'm going to shoot probably the 6 ball when we look at this, right? There's no reason for me to try to bank the 1 ball into the cross corner pocket when I've got the 6 ball just staring at me in the face. But when I shoot the 6, where am I going to go from there? All of that, in my opinion, is very important to figure out before I even get down on the shot and attempt to shoot. So when we do this, that's why you see me hopefully looking around. My logos and stuff might be in the way. And so here I am about to shoot the 6. Now we can see here that it looks like I should have some low on the cue ball, because since I'm going to be cutting the 6 ball to my left, that means the cue ball has to go to the right, and I don't want it to touch the 12 ball. So I want to try to draw underneath and hit the rail, come back out, hopefully to where I get some sort of position on this 3 ball that I could shoot here into this corner pocket. So I'm hoping to land somewhere in this area here. And it looks like I ended up touching the 12 anyway, but the bottom spin at least allowed me to come into the area that I wanted to. So the camera angle may not show it, but I can see the 3, right? The 3 ball is makeable. So from the 3, where would y'all think I'm going to go from here? Am I going to go from the 3 to the 5? Am I going to go from the 3 maybe down to the 1? And then that way I can try to go from the 1 to the 4. Like, how would y'all actually play this? As you can see here, that's what I'm trying to figure out. Do I want to go from the 3 to the 7, from the 3 to the, like, how am I going to, what transitions am I going to try to do here? I mean, heck, do I want to try to play the 7 now and run into the 4? Because that's what you just saw me do when I walked over there. I'm trying to figure all this out. And what I end up settling on, with a little bit of top left spin, is I go ahead and take the 3 down. And Michael, you called it. I go from the 3 to the 1. Because I would like my 5 ball to be the key ball to the 8 ball. 5 ball will go here into the corner, and the 8 ball will go here in this corner. Now, here's the funny part. I was going to say cool part. Here's the funny part. 1, you see me shooting left-handed. 2, I want to try to get position on this 4 ball, right? So we look and see that obviously I'm going to try to do this, which means my cue ball has to do something like this, and I got to be very careful because I'm going to land in a very small zone. A very small zone. I don't want to land outside of the zone, and I don't want to be, anywhere somewhere right here, because it becomes a difficult cut shot to be able to make the 4 into this corner pocket. I'd rather be flat on the ball. Watch what happens. Right? I land exactly where I needed to, but I don't make the 1 ball. And I just sat there. I ended up coming to the conclusion on right then and there what I should have done, and that was not try to play position on the 4. I should have ran into the 4. That's what I should have done. All I should have done was run into the 4, and if anything, I'll have a 4-7 combination. Maybe the 4 will roll far enough to where I can it'll roll past the 7 and shoot the 4 into the upper left corner pocket, or I can just shoot the 7 one or the other, instead of trying to play that precise position, because it doesn't even allow me to have enough power. Something like this, I've done this on more than one occasion. I try to play that perfect position, and using the speed to land on that perfect position doesn't allow me to make the shot. It ends up being too soft. So it's just something that I would have taken into more and more consideration on being able to do that. So Thomas is going to get to come to the table. Let's see what kind of pattern Thomas is going to do, because he's got a lot of work to do here. Okay, I believe this is the 15 ball he is starting with first. put some heavy spin on the ball. And I believe that means he wanted to get position for the 11. So I probably, he tries to play the combination there. So if we come back to this shot here, it's difficult to say, like, how do you really want to play this? Because if the 11 ball was supposed to be the next shot, or was the 9-11 combination supposed to be the next shot? I would think if I could help it, I don't necessarily want to play combinations unless I absolutely have to. And in this case here, I don't think it's absolutely needed on this one here. I would have suggested that the ball just be made and just gently bump into the 9. And I say gently bump into the 9 because you don't want the 9 tying up with my 4, tying up with my 7, because then you can't do anything. But the moment you touch the 9 ball, you have a shot here on the 11, and both the 9 and the 13 would still be able to go into the pocket here, which this at least allows you to minimize your cue ball movement. But then at the same time, what other options do we have? Well, we certainly got this 10 ball just staring at us straight in the face that we probably could have done something with, but that still doesn't solve what happens here. So removing the 15 ball, I think, was a good choice. I'm just not entirely sure that I personally would agree with the cue ball movement that I saw here. Because it looks like he's got some low on it. Yeah, he has a lot of low on it, considering he's got a lot of bottom spin on it and quite a bit of left spin for it to do what it did. So cue ball bumps into my ball here. And so now what am I able to do? Well, he ends up putting the cue ball in a pretty darn decent position, right? I can obviously hit my 5 ball, but I can't do anything with it. I can hit my 7 ball, but I can't cut it into the side. I can't, do I really want to try to cross bank the 7 and combo the 1 in? I mean, that's at least an option. And I can't shoot the 1. So look at what I'm doing here. If y'all saw at least the thumbnail, this is the shot. Right? I'm going to try to force my 4 ball through my opponent's 11 ball to go into the corner pocket. And I do this with bottom spin. Right? Why? Because when I hit the cue ball with bottom spin, one, I have to be able to judge the power just enough to where the bottom spin stays on the cue ball, and that's why the cue ball draws back. But since the cue ball is spinning backwards, that automatically transfers a little bit of top spin into the 4 ball. Right on contact. And that's why you can see that the 4 ball continues to roll right after contacting the 11. So doing that transfer of spin is not the hard part. The hard part is this, making sure that I hit that 4 ball straight into, or as straight into the 11 as I possibly can. You can see that I actually kind of didn't hit it as straight because it just caught the point here. Because if I don't hit it any straighter, or if I hit it less straighter than what I did here, the 4 ball is just going to follow its way into a rail and not go in. So whenever you do shots like this, you got to be very careful and make sure that you hit perfectly straight. And that's where doing straight in drill shots comes in handy. Comes in handy a lot. So from here, the rest of the pattern should be pretty apparent here, where I can still end with the 5 ball as my key ball. The only thing I'm looking at here is, where is the shot line to the 5, and where do I want my cue ball to be when I shoot the 5 ball? Because I don't want my cue ball tracking towards the 8 ball. I'd rather it track away from the 8 ball. So all I do here is just roll the cue ball from the 7 to the 5 and make sure that my cue ball crosses the shot line of the 5 ball. So that way when I shoot the 5, my cue ball automatically tracks away from the 8 ball as I just stun it over. Because since I'm cutting the 5 to the left, my cue ball has to go to the right. And that allows me to land pretty flat on the 8 ball to where I can just make the 8 ball into the corner pocket. Now, in APA, for anybody that's new to my live streams and is just not familiar with the APA League, typically you are supposed to use some sort of personal item and place it next to the pocket that you're going to be trying to make the 8 ball in. It's the only ball in 8 ball that you have to call. Any other ball of your set that is pocketed, whether luckily or skillfully, still allows you to shoot. But at the local level, typically players do agree to just call the shots or call the 8 ball, and that's why you didn't see me mark the pocket that I was going to make it in. All I did was point at it. Okay, so here we go again. We're going to do another pop break. Let's see if I pop the cue ball a little bit better. Like that. See, that's how the cue ball is supposed to pop. So when I dropped my elbow, I dropped it after contacting the cue ball and got the result that I wanted. Now, what did I make on this one here? Here's the 9 ball. 10, 11, 12, 13. Looks like I dropped the 14 ball. Let's look at solids now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I'm stripes on this one. So now I have to go through the same exact exercise as I did before. Can I run this table? And for stripes, this looks to be really difficult. We've got this trouble spot right here. This is a trouble spot. And I guess this is kind of a trouble spot. It does look like the 9 ball goes into this corner pocket here. So what did I do here? I'm trying to remember. Oh, this is a really good question. Hector wants to know that in Vegas, is it mandatory for you to mark your pocket, or can you just come to an agreement like we do here usually? As far as I'm aware, when you go to a city event or a regional event or Vegas, the national event, there is no agreement. The rule is you must mark the pocket, so therefore mark the pocket. I'm pretty sure that's how it's done. At least at your local levels, that's when you can kind of get away with not marking the pocket, so long as you and your opponent agree that it's okay to call the pocket. So that's a good question, because it always pops up that if you do it at this stage of the game, can you do it in later stages of the game? And the answer is actually no. So really, if you want to be consistent, I shouldn't be doing this. I pretty much should be marking the pocket. And there are times where I don't even ask my opponents. What I'll end up doing is I'll go and grab my marker and proceed to start marking the pocket, but then my opponent will tell me the moment I mark the pocket that it's okay to just call it. So I'll have it marked on that very first game, but then on future racks after that, this is probably when you'll hear me start calling it from there. But always remember that once you're outside of your local level, it's pretty much just mandatory. Mark the pocket. Don't even attempt to ask and just like put yourself at any risk. You would just want to follow the rules at that point. Okay, so I don't exactly remember what I did and how I started things off here. Let's see. But you see me going through my typical routine here, where I walk around the table, I look to see what pockets are accessible, what balls are in trouble, yada yada, and then try to just figure things out. So we can see here, it looks like I'm settled in on the 12 ball. I most likely will have some bottom right spin. I'm going to be cutting it to the side pocket. What am I playing position for? So it looks like I might have position on the 9. When I look at this in retrospect, it makes me wonder if I should have played the 12 ball off the 5, so that way I open the pocket up for my 10 ball here. So that was probably a better decision, where I should have caromed my 12 ball off of the 5, but didn't. Unless the 5 goes, not the 5, I'm sorry, unless the 10 goes. If the 10 goes, that'll be fine. Or maybe I just didn't do it either because the 10 ball goes into this corner. Here it looks like I might be shooting the 9 ball with some topspin. Am I trying to break apart my 15? I was. So actually that must have been with top left spin, because we look and see here that I'm shooting the 9 like this. And so naturally, if the cue ball were to stun, it's supposed to go like this. But obviously I don't want that to happen. So that's why I have the topspin to push it above the tangent line. And I have a notion that I'm going to hit this rail. So I try to use the left spin to be able to hit the 15 ball like this. But as we saw, I didn't put enough left spin, right? Trial and error on being able to guess how much spin do you actually need. And I barely miss hitting my 15 ball. So what can I do from here? Well, I can clearly make the 11 ball and bump into the 8 and 13 and use my 10 ball as a backup. So this is probably with top right spin. Or just bump into the 8, so now the 13 is free. So really, when we look at this layout now, what's our only issue that we have left on the table? It's this guy, the guy that I failed to break apart on the previous shot. But if we also look at the table, I can attempt to shoot it right now. So who would attempt to shoot the 15 ball right now, even though it's a really difficult shot? Like, what are my options here? This is my only option, right? I'm looking at the 13 ball. Like, can I play the 13 ball to possibly break into the 12 or break into the 2 and the 15, or can I shoot the 10 ball? If I shoot the 10 ball, I have to bridge over the 13 ball. All right, so I go ahead and try to shoot this 15 ball and use the 2 ball to help me break the cue ball. That way I can get some sort of position on either the 10 or the 13. What do I end up doing? Doesn't that look familiar? I didn't hit it hard enough. Now, the interesting part about this shot is when I look at this in retrospect, I start to question whether or not if I committed a foul. And I don't think I did. All right, the 15 ball is at least clearly in front of the 2 ball. And so what ends up happening is that I hit the 15, then my cue ball hits the right side of the 2 ball, and that's why the 2 ball is going back up. And my cue ball still allows to go forward as I have the right spin that I need on the cue ball to be able to either make the 13 or possibly be able to do something with the 10 ball. But like I said, I don't hit the ball hard enough. So now we look at this here, and Thomas doesn't appear to have any issues on the table. All of the balls are wide out in the open. It's just a matter of what type of pattern would you attempt to build that allows you to be able to, 1, minimize your cue ball movement, 2, be able to maximize your run out percentage. And I don't know, it might be pretty clear that we're going to start with the 4 ball. How many would start with the 6? And I'm asking that because I wouldn't necessarily say that there's no right or wrong answer here. I think there are better answers. It's just because certain run out patterns might be more difficult than others. So like right now, I'm kind of thinking how the 6 ball is a good key ball. The 3 ball is a good key ball. And what I mean by that is it's the ball that I want to leave last to be able to shoot the 8 ball. And the more I look at this, the more I start to like the 3 ball the best. So I start to wonder, where exactly am I going to play this 6 ball? Let's see what Thomas does, and then we'll go back and see what we could have changed. So he is going to start with the 4 ball. Looks like he's going to stop the cue ball maybe for the 3. Oh, yeah, it looks like, did he undercut the ball? Is this just a miss by undercutting the ball? Because it looks like he tries to maybe spin it in. He's got a little bit of left spin on the cue ball, and he just underhits the ball. The pocket ends up rejecting it as it catches the side rail. Now, I'm curious though. Again, is this the way we think the pattern should be played? I don't really have an issue with shooting the 4 ball. My question is going to be, when do we come down here to deal with the 7? All right? Does anybody see what type of run out patterns does anybody see here if they were to attempt to run this entire table? I'll take just a couple of suggestions before we move on from here. Especially as I attempt to study, like how would I attempt to do this? Because even at this point, I'm not entirely sure. Because if I had to think about it, I would most likely maybe try to get position on this 7 right now. I think that's probably what I would end up trying to do is get position on the 7 right now. And from the 7, I don't know if I would transition back to the 3 or to the 5, because right now I'm still thinking like these are the best 2 balls that I would want to leave for last. And because I play so much straight pool, that's why I'm thinking about this, because if I were able to shoot the 3 here or shoot the 6 here, like I would leave my cue ball somewhere right around here to where I can just make the 8. Like no big deal. So let's see what we got here. What are some examples people are coming up with? We got SoCal Texan is saying 4-7, 3-1, 2-6. So let's see here. We got 4 ball on the side that means some sort of draw shot, maybe even a follow shot. It doesn't really matter, but you're coming somewhere over here for the 7, and you want to play the 7 into the corner. Probably come off the rail like this. 4, 7, 3, 1, 2, 6. So yeah, you definitely probably want to try to get flat on the ball. So that way you can maybe play a little bit of a stun run through shot. And then you said play the 1. Play the 2. We did forget about the 5 though. There's a 5 ball right here under his arm. So where does the 5 come into play? So Thomas looks at this in retrospect and thinks he should have started with the 6 ball. That's really not a half bad idea. Because the 6, like he says, allows him to go to the 1. He probably wants to roll forward. I don't necessarily think you want to stop shot. You want to try to get a little flat on the 1 ball. And if you end up getting hooked behind the 13 ball, that's okay because you have this 4 ball here as a backup shot. So the flatter you get on this 1 ball, the better, because then you can hold the cue ball somewhere right around here for the 2. Now from the 2, he says he would go to the 5, and then from the 5, he would go to the 7. From the 7, you play the 4 in the side pocket, 3 into the corner. Like that, I think that's a pretty decent run out pattern. Let me look at one more. And let's see here. Let's look at Mac Bonelli. You're saying 6, 4, 7, 3, 1, 2, 8. You forgot the 5 ball. Everybody's forgetting about the 5 ball. When I allowed him to get to this position here, everybody forgot that the 5 ball was underneath his arm. All right. So we'll go ahead and move on from here. This is what I like to do. I like to see other people's options. Like I said, I don't think there's a right or wrong answer. We just try to look for better answers that allow us to have a higher probability of being able to run out. I think we just unfortunately just undercut this ball. If I had to guess, though, if he would have made it, what would he have done next? Probably the 1 ball? Where does this cue ball end up? Well, he doesn't have shape on the 1. I think the 6 is the way. He'd probably end up shooting the 5 ball. All right, so back to me. Now I've got an issue. Again, look at my 13 ball. Right? What am I looking at? Right? Deja vu? Right? Do I try to force my 13 ball through the 3 ball? Because I'm certainly not going to force its way through the 1 ball into this pocket. All right, so it looks like I settle on the 15 ball. What am I doing here? That was done with a little bit of bottom left as I try to get position on the 10 ball. Certainly wanted to be a little bit closer, right? Maybe like right around here. Because then what am I doing? It looks like I'm sizing up to be able to play the same shot that I did in the previous rack, where I try to get my object ball to roll right through an imposing object ball. So I do try to just roll this ball in. These are pretty dangerous shots to play when you try to just get the cue ball to just gently roll forward. Especially since I got stuck on the rail, because now I can't do this. So what do we do from here? What are the options? Since I can't transfer topspin into the 13 ball to be able to burrow its way through the 3 ball and go into the pocket, what is my other alternative? Does anybody know? Or what would y'all try here? What I'm doing here, if anybody gets confused, because I know it looks like I'm queuing up on the 13 ball. That's not what I'm doing here. What I'm doing here is looking to see what my shot on the 8 ball would look like. If I successfully make my 13 ball past my opponent's 3 ball, what is my shot on the 8 ball going to look like? And that's what I'm doing over here. I'm looking to see how thin of a back cut shot on the 8 ball I'm going to have, and am I okay with it? Because I am. Since I'm so close to the rail, I automatically have to be putting topspin. So the only thing I can do here is I can't hit this too hard. I got to hit this with the right amount of pace to where the 13 ball has forward roll on it. But as you can see, either I didn't hit it hard enough, and I don't even know if I can hit it harder, because then I don't know if the 13 ball will still be able to burrow its way through. But I do end up making my opponent's 3 ball. So down goes that. Shoots the 1 ball in. It's a little bump on the 6 ball. Thomas, I would have to say here that I think some of your shots you're hitting a little heavy-handed. I don't think you necessarily wanted to hit that shot that hard. Okay, this works out. Uh-oh. That doesn't work out. Oh, no. You certainly don't want to give me ball in hand in a position like this. So looks like just a little too much topspin, and like I said, a little heavy-handed. Just a little heavy-handed. So the only thing I do here is just cut the ball in and have the natural angle give me position for the 8 ball. So there was nothing really hard with the transition from the 13 to the 8 here. And then just the stop shot. All right, let's move on to the next rack. Okay, back to pop breaking. And you see there, I didn't hit the rack square. I still got the cue ball to pop, because what causes the cue ball to pop into the air like that? Well, since I'm hitting with an elevated cue, it's basically like doing a jump shot, right? So since my cue is elevated, when I hit the cue ball, it's essentially skipping its way over to the rack. It's not rolling along the surface of the table over to the rack. If the cue ball strikes the rack while it's off the table, that's what causes the cue ball to just fly into the air. So when you look at the way that I broke here, as I slow it down, this camera angle might not be able to show it, but right there, the cue ball is already slightly off of the table. And I hit the head ball, which is the 2 ball in this case, while the cue ball is off the table, but I also hit the 2 ball on the left side, which is why you see the cue ball pop to the left. So how many times have y'all broke from an off-center hit, and you watch your cue ball fly off the table in the same direction from whatever it is that you're breaking from? This would be why. You would definitely need to check the elevation of your cue and how you're actually striking the cue ball. Because in order for the cue ball to bounce off of the air, it has to hit the rack when it's off of the table. And that's usually caused by an elevated cue. Environmental conditions can obviously cause it as well. Like if there's a little divot somewhere in the slate to the table and the cue ball rolls over it and causes it to, kind of like when your car hits a pothole in the road and your car kind of bounces, like something like that can obviously cause the cue ball to pop into the air and fly off the table as well. So just things that you have to be careful for, because if you're going to do this on purpose, like I try to do, you definitely want to try to make sure that you get a square hit on the cue ball, because this clearly could have flew off the table, or it could have popped back at an angle and then rolled right into the side pocket, which is a very common thing that actually happens from time to time. Now, fortunately, the cue ball comes right back to the middle of the table, which is great, but I don't make a ball, which sucks. All right. So what do we do with this table? We got a wide open table. How do we assess this table? How many of y'all come to the table and instantly just zone in on a ball to shoot at without assessing the rest of the table? So like, for example, how many of y'all would just come to the table and let's say this ball goes and you would just shoot this and say, I'm going to be stripes. And then after you claim stripes, then you try to figure out what to do. How many of y'all do that? This is the only obvious ball that I see. Would you play a 4-7 combination? Basically, when you come to the table for the first time, whether it's after the break or when it's after the break from a dry break or from making a ball on the break, you just immediately shoot in a ball and then try to figure out what to do after that. I think it's a very common thing that a lot of people actually do, and it's usually something that I do not suggest, because at least here with an open table, you definitely want to assess, well, which one do you think you can run? Because Thomas has got to be wondering, does he come to the table and think, hey, I'm going to win, right? Because I'm going to run out. from here? Or does he think, well, both solids and stripes are really difficult. I need to claim one of them, but I don't think I'm going to run out. So not only do I need to claim a set, I need to figure out where I'm going to stop. Where am I going to play some sort of defensive shot, allow me to come to the table and hope that I don't run the table? Because I think I talked about this in my last live stream, and I'm going to ask the question again: is how many of y'all when do y'all come to the table and go, I'm about to win? And I don't want the answer to be when you're shooting at the 8-ball, right? That would be a very common answer. When you come to the table and you look at a particular layout, regardless if you're solids or stripes, when you look at the layout, how many of y'all can come to the table and go, I can run this. I can win the rack from here. Because when you come to the table with that attitude, you would basically, that means you also should have had some idea of how you're going to run the table. You've built the entire pattern of how you're going to try to play it. And then how many of y'all would come to the table and go, well, I don't think I can run this out, but I'm going to try to run it out, right? So you don't think you can run the table, but you're going to try to run the table, most likely mess up during that run, and now your opponent has an easier layout to deal with because you've basically made a bunch of balls and cleared off a bunch of obstacles, right? That's something that you should definitely should think about. It's very easy to fall into this little trap of, there's all these balls that I can make, so let me go ahead and try to make all these balls, and then, and even though I don't know what I'm going to do when I get to a certain point, then I'm either going to come up with some sort of miracle and hope something falls. So as I said, Thomas instantly, I won't say instantly, but I was right that this ball went. So I actually want to go back and look here. We'll stop right here. Because when we look at stripes, and I can see it looks like William McDowell, he also likes stripes. So is there an issue with stripes? Well, let's take a look. We can't tell if the 15 ball passes by the 2 ball, so that could be a potential concern. The 9 ball at least goes here, and so does this ball, but how do I put the cue ball back here to be able to shoot it, right? That could be something of concern. Got this ball all the way down here that can go into these pockets, but what ball allows us to get to those balls, or to get to this ball? And then this guy is kind of an issue. All right, so I don't know. Is stripes better, even though we've got a nice open shot? Or I did talk about a 4-7 combination. If we look at solids, even though, and I'm not suggesting that solids is better than stripes or stripes is better than solids, I just want y'all to take into consideration how this looks. If we were to attempt to claim solids, because there is this 3 ball, this 3 ball is a harder shot, clearly a harder shot than this ball here, which I think is the 10 ball. And then there's this 4-7 combination that can possibly happen as well. When we look at solids, the only ball that appears to be in trouble is the 1 ball. Right? So I don't know if just by that alone, I would think maybe solids might be the better set. I'm just trying to really discern whether or not if I would choose solids and play the 4-7 combination or play the 3 ball. But if I am dead set on stripes, then this becomes a priority of mine. Before I shoot this ball in, I need to know how I'm going to deal with these 3 balls here. If I can't figure out what I'm going to do with these 3 balls, that might turn me away from shooting stripes. This is at least how much thought I put into the layout of the table, especially when I come to an open table. All right, so he does make this ball though, and then he makes the 15 afterwards. And so he plays that with some top right spin. I think he was trying to get the 7 out of the way, so maybe the 13 would go as well. Let's see, I think the 10 ball is down, and that was the 15 that he just shot. Tries to go for the 14 ball, misses, bumps the 12 out of the way. So even if he would have made it, right? What do we do from here? If he would have made that ball, the 12 ball would still be where it's at. And I'm trying to figure out if this is the way that I would have played the shot. Meaning, would I have stunned the cue ball? Let's look at this one more time. How did he, first, how did he miss this? It's an overcut or an undercut? So he cut to his left. The cue ball is going to the right, and it was an undercut. So he needs to cut it more, which means the cue ball is really going to go off in this direction here. So it's hard to tell. I can't tell if the 12 ball passes. So what transition do we play from here? So since I can't figure out what to do from here, I know I have to cut this ball more for it to go in, and I can't tell if this 12 ball goes in. Well, I'm actually going to say that it doesn't. I'm going to just say that the 2 and the 1 are blocking it enough. So now that means that I probably should not have played this transition. So that makes me want to go back to this shot. Maybe even go back to this shot and try to figure out how would I have actually done this. If I at least go back to here, because remember what I said, this is my priority. I have to be able to figure out what to do with this here. So I'm just not sure. I don't want to go too far into this, but I just hope what I'm talking about makes sense as to how I would try to solve the rack. Because if I get to this point here and realize that my run comes to an end pretty much, well then it might not be to my benefit to even make this ball. What I probably would have ended up doing is just pushing this ball and blocking this pocket, so that way I can't do anything with the 1 and the 2. Basically, when I realize I can't run the table, I got to figure out how to make the table harder for my opponent. Whether it's blocking a pocket, putting the cue ball in a difficult spot, hiding the cue ball if I can, right, and then just be able to go from here. So considering this layout, I don't even think I would attempt to make the 14 ball. I would just push the 14 ball down here and maybe just allow the cue ball to roll forward and hug up next to the 9 and the 12. All right, so what am I doing here? Am I shooting the 4 or the 7? I'm shooting the 7. Okay, so with the 7 ball gone, it looks like I played that with some high inside, so that way I can do the 3-rail shot. I got position on the 4 or the 6. We can look at the table and clearly should be able to see that one of these 2 balls right here is probably going to be the last ball that I shoot at, and the 8 ball is going to go over here. So then I start figuring out, well, what do I want to do? Do I want to leave this ball last? First, I need to decide which one's going to be last, because I don't want to leave these 2 last, because I don't want to shoot from the 6 to the 4. That's a little difficult to do, even though it's doable. So I might end up shooting the 4 now. Is that what I do? Yeah, I take the 4 out now. It's like I've got a little low on the cue ball. Bump into the 13. That was probably not intentional. Yeah, I don't think I was supposed to touch the 13 ball, because that means the 6 ball was going to be my last shot. 6 ball was my key ball. Now, did y'all see what I did there? Go back and look at this. Did y'all see what I was attempting to measure up? Because I messed up, right? I've come to the conclusion that I can't run the table. I'm not going to attempt to wildly bank this 6 ball. I'm not going to try to wildly kick. So what do y'all see me doing here? I'm looking to see how I can get my cue ball to go right along this line and hide right behind the 8 ball, so I can play some sort of safety. Right, rolling cue ball or top spin with a little bit of left spin and try to help the cue ball get back there, because it's going to be a rather thin hit on the 6. Because I don't really want the 6 ball to move all that much. And I get my safety. All right, so at this point, Thomas just needs to make sure that he makes contact with the ball. He doesn't want to give me ball in hand. I always this is why I actually enjoy Thomas as a person, because he does play for fun and doesn't worry about the win or the loss really. Now clearly as pool players we always want to be able to get better, right? We don't want to we want to play for fun, but we also want to improve our games as we go along. So all I can hope for, Thomas, is that what we talk about here not only, like I said, helps the viewers out, it helps me out, and then it helps you out. So Thomas failed to hit a ball. So I've got ball in hand. So what do I want to do? I want to deal with the hardest ball on the table to play position on. And I'm trying to find a spot, we'll say right here. We look at the table, and that's why you saw me place the cue ball right here, so that way I can get rid of this one ball, right? And then after that, the table is kind of wide open. I just have to make sure I can control my cue ball, right? So just because I have a wide open table, and I might be confident that I can run the table, I gotta make sure that I keep my cue ball control in check, because things can go wrong. I might hit too hard, I might hit too soft, like we've already seen on some of the racks where I ended up hitting a shot too soft and the ball did not go in. So since I have ball in hand, like I said, I want to be able to just start with a ball that's the hardest to play position. There's no reason for me to try to play a ball and bump into a ball, right? There's really no clusters that I have to deal with here. So there, what I'm thinking about trying to do is, do I want to try to play position for the 5, or do I want to try to play position for the 3? That's why I walked over there. I'm going to be rolling this cue ball past the 1. Right? And I didn't get position on the 3 or the 5, or did I get position on the 3? But I always have this backup shot on the 2. Because I don't like either of these. And it looks like I did get position. I rolled far enough to get position on the 3. So this is probably what's in top left. Because now I'm going to try to go to the side rail and come back for the 5. Now, I would have liked to have landed flat on the 5, but I don't think I did. And see that right there? That I wanted to run into the 9 ball. Since I have this cut angle, I figured, actually, and I hit this wrong, it's with this. I tried to stun into the 9 ball and have the 9 ball break my cue ball, so that way I can be flat, or I have the correct angle on the 2 to use the side rail and come back over for the 6, because like I said, I wanted my 6 ball to be the key ball that leads me right to the 8. So look at the shot I end up having on the 2. Not the best of positions to be in. You can see here, I'm elevating my cue. I want to hit bottom on the cue ball. And I managed to back cut the 2 ball in, draw the cue ball 3 rails out, and get nice and flat on the 6 ball. Less than ideal, but I managed to pull it off. And remember, all of this stems from the safety that I played where I tucked the cue ball behind the 8. Because since my cue ball control was not on par during the middle portion of the rack, the safety that I played that allowed me to get ball in hand allows me to finish the rack from there. Now, there's a nice pop that I had, but the cue ball, as the cue ball was about to slide forward, you saw it collides with the 4 ball, and I break try again. But look at the spreads. Right? If I could just make a ball when I get a spread like this. These are definitely not the types of spreads that I would want to leave my my opponent. So now we do the same thing. Let's rinse and repeat the same thing. Let's get to an angle where we can hopefully see the entire table. We'll say right here. All right, so Thomas has got to do the same exact thing. The same exact thing. Assess the table, figure out which one is going to be the easiest for him to do. The unfortunate part, when we look at the 8 ball can't go here. It looks like the 8 ball at least can be tucked behind the 11 to go here. So that might allow us to choose solids. If it doesn't go, then we're almost kind of forced to take stripes. Because if we can at least still stick with solids and bump the 8 ball out of place to where we can like get it more towards the middle of the table and have access to more pockets, that would be a possibility. But we look at this like, and is there really any issues? It doesn't really look like it. I can't tell if this 13 ball goes here to the 7. It clearly goes over here. And the 10 ball is kind of funny. The 10 ball at least goes over here, and I don't know if the 10 ball goes over here. If the 10 ball goes into the side pocket, then the 13 ball is no issue because the 13 ball is going to be over here. So I kind of think solids and stripes are almost equal. When I look at this, if I wanted to choose stripes, I'm most likely going to start with the 9 ball here, and then try to figure out the rest of the pattern. And what would the rest of the pattern be? I'm not sure. If I were to choose solids, I'm more than likely going to start with the 1 ball. More than likely. Let's see what happens, though. Okay, so Thomas likes solids. He's going to start with the 1 ball, as I would have. Now, I don't think I would have necessarily done that, though, because remember, we don't necessarily want to bump into balls if we don't need to. Right? So, like, what was the alternative? Well, I think he could have just played a stop shot, and then you'd have a shot here on the 3 ball. And the only reason why I say that is because since we bumped that 7 ball, we could have bumped it into a bad position. We could have bumped it to where it ties up next to the 6 or it ties up next to the 4. Fortunately, that didn't happen here. All right, and that was the same kind of shot we saw earlier where he basically drew the ball underneath and then tried to spin it over, and I don't think we needed the draw. And then an unfortunate scratch that we see there. So I think the biggest thing I can see off of this one here, though, Thomas, is like I said in the last rack, I think you're hitting a little too hard than you should. I think if you soften up your stroke and smooth it out, you probably would be surprised at the type of cue ball transitions that you can actually pull off. You don't have to try to muscle the cue ball around. All right, so I'm stripes. What kind of patterns would everybody try to do here with stripes? So it looks like I start with the 15 ball, top spin on the cue ball, rolls forward, gives me a position on almost anything. But it looks like I'm going to shoot the 14 next. I would have to think I wanted to get position on the 13 ball, but not this position. If I attempted to shoot the 13 ball now, my cue ball goes this way. And I don't want that to happen. So I think this is where I played an audible and shot the 9. And what am I going to do? Am I going to try to bump into the 12 over there? Or am I hitting on the cue ball? No? What am I doing? Okay, that's just a rolling ball. I kind of bump into the 12. I gotta leave one of these, and it would have to be the 12 ball I would have to leave. There's no reason for me to shoot the 12 ball now. I need to most likely play the 11 and then move to one of these two here. What am I doing? Looks like I have a little above center hit on the cue ball. Do I have any right spin? It looks like I must have had a little bit of right spin. And yeah, so where did I want the cue ball? Let's go back. Right there, right? Why do I want the cue ball here? Because I can just play a stop shot, stun the cue ball over here, and then just roll this ball in, and then play the 8-ball like this. Right? But if your cue ball control is not where it is, like clearly mine is on this evening, then you have to come up with audibles. So what's my audible here? Well, now I'm going to go ahead and take out my 12 and see if I can land flat on the 13 again. Then go 13-10 to the 8. Right? But look what happened. I rolled too far away. And I thought I hit that 12 ball really soft. Now this is a tricky shot to play here. Watch what I try to do. End up undercutting the ball, and then I bumped into the 10 ball, and I would have been able to shoot the 10 ball here into the corner pocket. Now, what I can't remember is, did I really want to bump into the 10 ball? And I honestly don't remember at this point if that's what I wanted to do here. Right? I wanted to try to cut the 13 to the side. I would tend to think that what I might have wanted to try to do was cut the ball in, and you saw the cue ball just like stun its way over here, and I think I wanted the cue ball to do this with the amount of spin that I have on the ball. I don't think I wanted to bump into the ball. But I ended up undercutting it. So I think I probably would have not only needed to cut it more, but I probably would have needed more spin since the amount of spin that I put on the ball wasn't enough. Now, here's where things have to be careful, right? Because I see this happen a lot when it comes to APA. Because if we go back to my question of when do you come to the table and go, I'm about to win? Did Thomas come to the table thinking that he's going to win here? And what is he going to do? Now, judging by his posture here, it looks like he might be trying to play the 5 ball here into the side pocket. His cue ball might bump into the 2. Okay, fine. What the heck are we going to do here? I mean, it looks like we have the 7. Okay, so we have to make sure that we get position on the 7. What are we going to do with the 6 and the 4? Are we going to play a 6-4 combination? Are we going to try to get perfect position on the 4 to where we can cut the 4 in and play position for the 6? If you think about all of that, that's a lot of heavy cue ball movement, a lot of good cue ball control. And I'm not suggesting that Thomas doesn't have the skill set to do so. I'm just suggesting how much work it takes to put in to be able to run this out. And what caliber of a player do you consider yourself to be in order to do that? Like, do you think you can do that on out of 10 attempts? If I were to set this layout and give you 10 attempts to be able to run it out, how many times do you think you'd be able to successfully run it out? Because like me, I don't think I'm running this out as often as I would like. And so instinctively, that makes me think defensively, where I want to play some sort of defensive shot. And the first shot that comes to my mind is to just do something like this. Bank this ball away and then try to tuck the cue ball somewhere right around here, so that way the 4 and the 6 are blocking access to the 14 and 13, and I would have to play some sort of kick shot. Because at the very least, if I left my opponent this, and my opponent kicks out and runs out, I'm going to be more okay with losing a rack that way than to attempt to run out a very difficult layout, mess up, and make the layout easier for my opponent to run out. So I hope that makes sense. Let's see what happens here. Like I said, it looks like Thomas is going to shoot the 5 ball. His cue ball is most likely going to bump into the 2. So it bumps into the 2. Mac Benelli, yes, the 13 ball is hanging in the pocket, but you hopefully should be able to notice where it's hanging in the pocket. It's hanging on one side of the pocket. So like if I was looking at the pocket like this, it's hanging on the right side of the pocket. It's not dead center into the pocket. So to play a kick shot, it would have to be a kick combo, right? So can you kick combo the 10 into the 13 and possibly get position on the 10 ball afterwards and still be able to run out? Yes. What is the probability of being able to do that over and over and over? I don't even from a player of my caliber, I would not consider that to be a high percentage shot. I think even for me, if I were right here and I have a kick path to try to do this, now clearly I'm probably going to try to do it, but I don't even think I would put me at 50% at being able to try to do it. Now, if I don't even put myself at 50% and I'm playing a lower skill level player, well, that I would have to assume that their percentage is even lower. Now, does that mean that they're not going to successfully do it? No, it's just, again, it's a lower percent shot, and if they happen to do it, then cool. Then that means they earned the victory, right? I'm not going to accidentally give them the victory. Now, if the 13 ball was more in the center of the pocket, then that's a different scenario, right? Because then now you can just try to freely kick at the ball. Right? Because look at what we have here. I mentioned about the combination. You attempt to go for the combination. We're not successful at the combination. And then look what I get to come to the table with, right? Which do you think is easier to swallow? Losing a game by doing this, or losing a game by forcing me to kick at this? Right? Because if I kicked at that, this is what I would hope would happen. So would you rather lose the game this way? Or would you rather lose the game by me doing a kick combo? That's basically the point that I try to lean towards. If I play the kick combo, or even if I just successfully kick the 13 in and get position on the 10 ball, and you can see how difficult that I am trying to transition over to the 8. If I happen to do all that, well, again, how often am I going to be able to do that in a row versus how often am I going to be able to run this out in a row? I just think that's something that should be taken into consideration. As I thinly try to cut the 8 ball into the corner pocket, and the cue ball is going up and down the table, I just got to make sure I don't accidentally run into a ball and accidentally fall into a pocket. But I take that one down, and I'm on the hill. Now, in APA 8 ball, when I'm on the hill, I do try to end the set right away with an 8 ball break. So here, I'm hitting the cue ball with a little bit of bottom left spin. You can see the 8 ball moves. That's the reason why I try to do it. It increases the probability of being able to make the 8 ball on the break, even though the probability is still low. The 8 ball is going to move out of the rack, and that at least gives me an opportunity to possibly win off of the break, provided, of course, that I don't scratch. Now, I did make a ball on the break. What is it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It looks like I'm stripes. So 9, 10. Looks like the 11 ball is gone. All right, what was the first thing that I did? Let's look at this again. Where's the trouble spot? All right, this ball's okay. It goes here. This ball is fine. It goes here. I shot this ball in. This ball is okay. It can go here. And this is most likely going to be my last ball because the 8 ball is right there. These two guys are kind of an issue, but they are kind of lined up for a combination. That's why I need to get this 3 ball out of the way. So when I shot the 13 ball with a little bit of stun and I thumped the cue ball, that's why I can push the 3 ball out of the way. I have this as a backup shot, and then the combo is there. So there you can see, like, that's the position I got to be able to get on this 12 ball in order to be able to shoot it into the side pocket and be able to play the 8. So now that I'm at the table here, looks like everything's in the order that I want it to be. But I don't remember do I play position from this ball to the combination, or do I play to the 9 ball? I want to make sure I don't touch that 7 ball. And it looks like this is for the 9. I don't think I'm going to go for the combination at this angle. I'd want to use the 9 ball to get a better angle on the ball, on this combo. Or heck, maybe I'll save the combo for last, because it is kind of wired. Looks like that's what I did. I'm saving the combo for last. And the only reason why I would do this is because, like I said, the combo is wired up. But I don't like where I landed on the cue ball because I have to allow the cue ball to move. Right? Because now, instead of having a flat combo, I have a cut combo. So I have to make sure that I don't scratch. So I used a little bit of top right on the cue ball, so that way when the cue ball hits the rail, it's going to hopefully spin back to the other side of the 6 ball, but I end up clipping the 6 ball and even making the 6 ball. And then from here, I kind of have to do the same thing. I have to make sure that my cue ball cuts the ball in, hits this rail, comes back over here and gives me position on the 8. I think I do this with just top spin. I don't think I try to use any side spin on this shot. And just like we've seen in previous racks, I don't hit it hard enough. Right? The 1 ball is I can hit the 8 ball. I can see it and I can hit it, but I'll end up overcutting the ball and missing. So here I try to use the double the distance kicking system, where you measure how far away the spot that you want to hit is from the rail, and then just try to take that measurement and bring it back to the take where you're trying to hit back to the rail, so that way you can try to kick the ball in. And I either must have measured wrong or I didn't aim correctly, because I just flat out missed. All right, so Thomas, you have ball in hand. You start with the 4 ball, and I like starting with the 4 ball, but I don't like that. The cue ball rolling up next to the 7. What was I would wonder what the intention was here, because clearly you don't want to be shooting at the 2 ball bridged over the 7, right? And especially since you're bridging over the ball, you have very limited access to the cue ball, so you have very little control over the cue ball. Okay, good attempt there. We would have had position on the 5 had we made it, but then now you at least block the pocket, so that's a good thing. All right, so I'd want to go back to this. Why did we allow the cue ball to move the way that it did? It looks like you have a little bit above center, so you allow the cue ball to just roll forward, when I would have tried to place the cue ball right around here. I would have shot this in like you did, but I'd want the cue ball to be somewhere right around here. And the reason for that is so I can play the 2 ball, and I want the cue ball to do something like this and land somewhere right around here. Because once I'm here, I've got all kinds of options on what I can do. I can either cut the 3, shoot the 7, like it doesn't matter. I can shoot the 1 or I can shoot the 5, right? I don't want the cue ball, like I said before, running into another ball or cluttering up next to a ball, because I want to make sure that I have full access to the cue ball. So this is probably how I would have attempted to play the run out from here. If I really wanted to just boil all this down, if I got this position here, I'd probably end up shooting the 7 ball into the corner, playing a stop shot, shoot the 3 ball into the corner, most likely draw back, probably for the 5 ball somewhere right around here. Play the 5 into the corner pocket, and I can either 2 rail my way over to the 1, and then just play the 1 into the same pocket and stun over for the 8 into the same pocket. If I don't like doing that, then I'll most likely shoot the 1 and then play the same 2 rail type position to be able to get to the 8, one or the other. Thomas Billington, I could have hit the 8, but as I mentioned before, I would be hitting the 8 too thin. So therefore, I wouldn't even make the ball. I mean, I'm on the hill. I'm trying to go for the win. So I was fairly confident that, kicking rail first would have worked out just fine for me. It just didn't. Now, what the heck am I supposed to do here? I don't think I have a bank angle for this corner pocket here, because I think the 5 ball blocks that bank angle. You see what I'm measuring? Why is my cue right here? What am I possibly measuring up here? Now call the side pocket. All right, because I'm clearly not going to be playing a safety on this shot here. And I just barely missed the 3-rail bank into the side pocket. Just barely missed it. Okay, good shot on the 1. I would still say a bit heavy-handed because I don't think he wanted to play from the 1 to come down here and then have to go back up to the 5. Three ball's a little tricky from there, and I mean, so is the 5. The 5 is definitely tricky as well. But I think this is do or die mode at this point, right? Like you just have to be able to make shots. All right, so we try to cut the 5. Looks like we undercut the 5, but we at least leave me we don't leave me a decent shot on the 8 ball. I have to be able to just try to bank the 8 or do something. So I call the 8 in the side, so that definitely means I'm going to bank it. And there we go. I'm able to take that match 5-0. Now, before I go into anything else, if anybody noticed that when I come over here to the bank, y'all notice I didn't do any type of measurements, and typically I do measurements when I do any types of banks or kicks or whatever. But here, I'm kind of just standing there looking at it. So, what am I doing? Well, I'm doing measurements, but I'm doing measurements with just my eyes. And one of my bank videos that I have that I think I marked it X marks the spot. What I'm doing here is I visualized a line through the 8 ball perpendicular to the side rail here. And then from this point, I visualized another line that went to the pocket that I wanted to bank to that looks like this. And then from the 8 ball again, I visualized another line that goes to the pocket opposite. Now, because of the camera angle, this isn't necessarily drawn to scale, but where these two lines crossed, I visualized another line that goes into the rail. And that point right here, or somewhere right around here, again, because of the camera angle, if this was a complete aerial view, this would probably look more visually correct. But from this intersecting point straight to the rail, perpendicular to the rail, is where I want to attempt to bank the 8 ball with the right speed in order to be able to have the possibility of it going in. Now, if I would have banked short, well, there's quite a few reasons why I could have banked short. I could have hit the shot too hard. I could have not cut it enough, or I could have accidentally put left spin on the cue ball, which transfers right spin to the 8 ball, which will end up shortening the outbound angle. If I would have banked long, then I possibly would have cut the 8 ball too much. I might have hit the 8 ball too soft because a softer hit widens the angle of the bank. And then I could have hit the 8 ball with too much right spin because too much right spin on the cue ball transfers too much left spin on the 8 ball. And to the left is where I want the 8 ball to go. All right, so 3 different variables that control how the ball being banked is going to react off of the rail. But when I use that measuring system, it at least gives me a good general idea of where I would like the 8 ball to hit. But then I also have to factor in how hard am I going to hit it? Am I going to use any side spin? Because then I'm going to make slight little adjustments from the measuring point that I came up with. But overall, like I said, Thomas, thanks for at least being here during the live stream. And I think the biggest thing that I want to say is I would probably just tell you to lighten up on your hits. I've shot with you on more than one occasions. You're a heck of a player, but here we saw that your cue ball was just getting away from you just a little too much. And if you back off the power, I think you're going to find that you're gonna be more in line with the majority of your shots and be able to run out better than before. But then I would also assess, like I mentioned before, to where when you come to the table and realize that the table is a little too difficult to run, even for your skill set, you definitely are going to want to look for some sort of safety options and allow your opponents to earn victories rather than you accidentally giving them victories. Kevin Decker, thank you so much for subscribing to my YouTube channel. Hopefully the videos that you see on my channel can help you out and improve your game or entertain you, one or the other. Now, with that being said, let's go back to this. And I have to prepare for the next match. So while I'm preparing for the next match, this is where I can take some questions, if anybody has any. And actually, before I answer any questions, just a second here. Gotta make sure I pull up the right video. Before I answer any questions, I will be right back. Look who I have, everybody. Anybody that doesn't remember, this is Link. This is the new miniature schnauzer that's been added to the family here. Oh, gosh. And this dude is much bigger than when he was a pup. I think he's... we got him when he was 7 weeks, and I think he's like 12 weeks now. He's only had his second round of shots, and we're still waiting to be able to give him his third round of shots. But this guy wanted to say hello. I don't know where Zelda's at. I haven't been able to find Zelda. But say hi, everybody, and then goodbye. You're just going to be one big distraction. Okay. All right. Now that we're back, like I said, does anybody have any questions or anything that I would be happy to answer? Let's see here. Oh, you're wondering if I when you say Parks, I'm assuming that you're referring to Brian Parks. I have not. I've not had the pleasure to play him. I have played against Ernesto Bayawa. I have had the pleasure of matching up with him. Ernesto pretty much destroys me. So if Ernesto can destroy me, I'm pretty sure Brian Parks would do the same thing. I think both of them are like 700 plus Fargo rated players. I'm only a 632, so I still have ways to go to be able to try to catch up to them. You know, I would clearly try to give them competition, but I would at least I'm humble enough to say that I consider them to be the favorite. All I could do is just try to battle my way. Could I beat them? 1 out of 10, 2 out of 10. Maybe like there's possibilities. I've beaten 700 Fargo rated players before, but then I've also been crushed by 700 Fargo rated players as well. So I don't know, but I've not had the chance to be able to meet, let alone play Brian. But like I said, I have played up against Ernesto before, and even he gives me problems. And Brian is a 735, so he's 100. He's over 103 points higher than me. So that would be a struggling game for me. All right. Well, I don't see any questions. Let's see, where are we at on things? Oh, holy crap! I got 92 of y'all here on YouTube. How many of you are there? Any viewers on Facebook? Looks like I got a couple of viewers on Facebook. Let's see, Big Bill, Regalis, and Tyler Patterson. Thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. So at this point here, if you haven't done so already, this is where I would really appreciate it if you would just give this stream a thumbs up. Whether you're on Facebook or YouTube, it does not matter. If you're on Facebook, then I would really appreciate if you would consider maybe sharing the stream to your Facebook profile, so that way any of your friends and families can discover who I am, and possibly if they want to get into pool, they can learn things from my YouTube channel, or let alone be able to share the stream to any of your favorite pool groups. But if you're watching on YouTube, not only would it be great if you would give the stream a thumbs up, but if you haven't done so already, maybe even subscribe to the channel. I'm currently sitting at... How many subscribers do I have on YouTube? I'm currently sitting at 93,020 subscribers. I'm really trying to see if I can actually get to 100,000 subscribers. I think that would just be amazing, because I never would have imagined that I would have come this far successfully on YouTube. And so I just want to keep on going nonstop. And if I get to 100,000 subscribers, then I'll probably end up doing like a really big giveaway on that one, and it'll probably be done on some form of a live stream as well. So I really would appreciate that. So if you can, give this stream a thumbs up, subscribe to the YouTube channel, or follow me on my Facebook page. Really would appreciate it. Okay, where are we at? Okay, so I don't really see any questions, so I'm going to go ahead and just roll right into the next match, and maybe before I end the stream, we'll just see if we can take some more questions from there. So how about that? Let's go ahead and change to this. Now, in this matchup, this is going to be a little different, because clearly you already see that, one, I'm at the table, a lot of balls are missing, so what happened? Well, in this matchup here, my opponent did not want to be on camera. And so even though I can quote unquote have him on camera if I wanted to, because I'm filming in a public place, I do typically, after the matches are over, I ask the opponents if they're okay with me publishing the matches on YouTube. And when I basically see hesitation that they don't want to be on YouTube, and that's regardless if they win or lose, then I'll say, well, what if I edit you out of the video? And that way no one sees who you are and how you shoot. And that allows them to be a little bit more comfortable, because presenting yourself to the world can be kind of a nerve-wracking kind of thing. So that's where I at least try to offer that respect to my opponent. So unfortunately, in this matchup here, we're not going to see my opponent shoot. I'm going to try to remember what all my opponent did during the match, and then you're going to see from time to time that, like, after I miss, or if I play some sort of safety or whatever, you're going to see these little fading transitions where I disappear from one end of the table and just magically reappear at another end of the table, because that's where I edited out the opponent. So at this point, what has happened here? you know, I'm playing up against another skill level 6. So that's why it's a race to 5-4. Except I was not the breaker. My opponent was. That's why I'm coming to the table right now in the position that you can probably determine that I'm solids, right? Because my opponent ran the table from the break, or did I break? I'm really trying to remember now. It's either I broke dry and my opponent ran this table, or my opponent broke and got to this point of the table. Crap. Why don't I remember? Well, anyway, it's. I don't think it's that important. But when I was, this is one thing that I like to do when I'm watching my opponents, and this is regardless of their skill levels. This 9-ball here was pretty much there from the beginning. I don't think it was exactly here, but it was around my 1 and my 4. And so when I was watching my opponent run the table, I kept asking myself, what is he going to do with the 9? What is he going to do with the 9? And then lo and behold, the 9-ball was the ball that ended up being last, and that's where I knew that I was most likely going to be coming to the table. And this is what I came to the table with. So we come back to, well, what am I going to do? Because clearly, I can shoot the 2-ball. Clearly, I might be able to shoot the 6-ball. But what am I going to do with this 1-ball? Do I really want to risk shooting the 4-ball into this corner pocket and breaking out the 1-ball? It's something that I can certainly try. But like I mentioned when I was reviewing my first match, if I come to the table and realize that I can't run the table, then I'm going to figure out where am I going to stop. And that means I might make a ball or two, maybe, and then I'm going to play some sort of a defensive shot. Well, in this case here, because my opponent only has 1 ball left on the table, I want to force my opponent to have to chase after that ball. So since I have this 7-ball tied up next to this 8 as well, the 7-ball does go into this pocket, but that means I have to get nice and flat on the 7 in order to be able to shoot it in. I don't want to risk cutting it and having the 7-ball accidentally clip the 8. At this point, I choose not to even make a ball. I choose to leave all the balls out on the table, so I'm just going to play a defensive shot. All right, so I just gently bank the 6. I wanted to push the cue ball more towards right here because my opponent can see the 9-ball. The 9-ball can be clipped and hit, but the 9-ball can't be made. So what you're about to see here is here's the transition, right? So my opponent hits the 9-ball. And it bumps into my 1-ball, and now I'm back to here again. And it's the same question. Do I want to attempt to run the table from here, or do I want to play some sort of safety? Now, I can admit, what happens right here is luck. What I was trying to do. I had something in mind, but the ending result ended up being lucky. You see that? That's how lucky I got. And while we're at it, because I'm going to go ahead and turn these off, and we're not even going to use them for this match here. I wanted to move the 1-ball. That part was on purpose, but I didn't hit my cue ball hard enough. My cue ball is supposed to be somewhere right around here. The fact that I actually hid the cue ball behind the 1-ball, which was the ball that I hit, that's where the luck part came into play there. So I got a little fortunate on this one, and now my opponent has my opponent was supposed to kick anyway, but he almost was able to just shoot right at the ball had I not gotten lucky. So he has to kick at this ball. If I remember correctly, he does make a successful hit. Yeah, he makes the successful hit, and we can see the 9-ball is now tied up with my 2-ball. Excuse me. But here, in this position, I feel like I'm in a better position to try to attack the table. Now, I'm still trying to figure things out. Like, how am I going to break this apart? The 7-ball is, you see right there, I don't like the 7-ball, even though the 7-ball goes. I just don't like it being so close to the 8-ball because it forces me to play really tight position back here. But now I go ahead and switch to attack mode. I start off, I think I'm shooting the 5-ball, and actually it's this. That was that. Top left spin. Right? Gives me position on the 4-ball and also gives me position on the 1-ball. But I really like this position on the 1 ball. Anybody guess why? And really, I don't even have to play a ball from here. Like, I can just shoot the 1 ball into the rail and hold the cue ball right here and make my opponent kick again. But I'm in attack mode at this point. And I really like the 1 ball from here. And that's why. I'm able to break out the 2. Yep, just like Thomas said, I'm able to break out the 2. Now I still have to ask myself, am I gonna continue to keep going? Right here, I'm just checking to see, can I make the 7 over here? I can't, but like I said, it does go over here. So that means I have to use the 2 ball to get onto the 7. Now that I've broken the 2 ball out. So since I've switched into attack mode at this point, this is where I attempt to play the 4 ball down into the corner. Cue ball's going to come off the side rail and get position on the 2. Then from the 2, I want to try to roll forward and get nice and flat on the 7 ball, so that way I can draw back for position on the 6. All right, so what do? This is another thing that I always advise players to do is to come over to where your next shot is going to be and see what the next shot is going to be like. So that way you, 1, know whether or not if you're going to be comfortable with taking the shot, and then 2, so you precisely know where you want the cue ball to be. Right? How many times would y'all come to the table and go, I just need to allow the cue ball to roll forward? You allow the cue ball to roll forward and realize you didn't roll far enough, or you rolled too far because you just didn't take that extra second to come over here and look at what your next shot was going to be. Right? There's a very precise position that I want to land in, so that's why I take that extra time to come over here and take a look at it. The only problem was, I think I rolled a little too far. And you'll see what I mean. See how I just drew straight back into the 6? So if I wouldn't have rolled too far, then my cue ball would be on this side of the 6 ball. Now all I'm doing is looking there to see if the 6 ball was frozen to the rail, and it is, but it doesn't matter because my cue ball is going to hit the short rail anyway. And I play just a basic safety to where my opponent, he can see the 9, he can attempt to bank the 9, but the 8 ball is in the way, or he can attempt to shoot the 9 down here, or he can do this. He attempts to play a safety. Now, he is successful at playing the safety in that I cannot directly cut the 6 ball into the corner pocket. And the 6 ball is off the rail by a little bit. But, like you saw in the thumbnail, I end up threading the needle perfectly to where the cue ball hits the rail first, and with the right amount of spin, you basically would call this a kick shot. This isn't necessarily a cut shot. And look at the cue ball. This is how you know how much spin was on that ball. Look at the angle that the cue ball is coming off of this rail. Right? Because I hit the rail first, and from this point, look at the angle that the cue ball is coming down. So wouldn't you think that the angle should go like this? Coming back up, like this angle in is equal to that angle out? But look what the cue ball does. It basically bounces back in the direction that it was coming in. which means that the spin that I had put on the ball is still, that I put on the cue ball is still on the cue ball. And when it hits the second rail, it basically becomes reverse English at that point. You know, it's the standard English on the first hit, but then it's reverse English when it comes off the second rail, and that's why the cue ball bounces back the way that it does. And I'm able to take the first rack down. So here we're going to see some more pop breaking. And we get to see it from a side angle. So there's a good pop break, but you know, you see where my cue ball gets hit by another ball. And so this is where I was talking about before, to where, like, look at the elevation that you see on my cue. Right? And I mean, look at the, you can see the cue shadow line. Like that's how elevated my cue is. I'm not like super elevated, like I'm gonna actually do like an actual jump shot, but I'm fairly elevated. So that way I can get the cue ball to skip across the table. And if I time all this just right, that's why I can get the pop. But then you notice how my cue comes up. Because like I said, when I drive my cue into the cue ball, I do drop my elbow so I don't drive the cue right into the felt or right into the cloth of the table. So I still have to drop my elbow, but I do want to try to make sure that I try to drop my elbow right after contacting the cue ball. Let's see. So DJ Dang, you're wanting to know how fast do I break in miles per hour? I don't know offhand. Typically with me playing on a 7-foot table, one, I don't break powerful. Like, I don't have a powerful break, and I don't attempt to break with it, with a whole lot of power. I do break harder in 8-ball than I do in 9-ball. In 9-ball, I would typically average anywhere between 14 to 15 miles an hour, averagely. And depending upon how the racks are breaking, then I might end up breaking harder. In 8-ball, I would probably have to think that I'm somewhere between 15 and 17 miles per hour. And that's on a 7-foot table. How fast is it on my 8-foot home table? I would have to clock it again. I've done it before on some of my videos where I've reviewed like the Predator BK Rush, or I've reviewed the J Flowers JF Force brake cue, and I've measured my my brakes on that, and I've averaged anywhere between 18 to 20 miles an hour. But I typically don't like to brake that hard because with that much power, I don't have as much control on the cue ball as I would like. So I would have to, if I wanted to average like a 20-mile-an-hour brake, I would need to practice it over and over again to make sure that I have the most amount of control with that amount of power. But typically I know that I have a good amount of control, like with this brake here, when it's somewhere between like 15 to 18 miles per hour. Now, what did I make on the brake here? I think it was solids, right? So let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4. I don't see the 5-ball. Then we look and see 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So I'm solids. So when we look at this, I mean, solids or stripes, this is usually what I bank on when I try to do the pop break. So I've got a pretty decent spread on the table. So I start with the 1-ball here, follow forward for the 4 or the 7. Looks like I followed far enough for the 7. Here, I most likely just play a stop shot, because then all my options are opened at this point. Oh, never mind. That was just a rolling ball. Now, interestingly enough, what does everybody do at this point? I can shoot at any ball, right? I can shoot at the 3-ball. I can shoot at the 4-ball, but why would I do that? Because my cue ball goes this way. I can shoot at the 6-ball, and I can shoot at the 2-ball. I can shoot any ball that I want. How would y'all do this? Let me see some patterns in the chat. How would y'all do this? Anybody? Who would shoot the 3-ball first? Who would shoot the 4-ball first? Who would shoot the 6-ball? Or who would shoot the 2-ball? So Jamal Williams, I hope I'm saying that correctly. You're saying that you would shoot 3, 4, 6, 2. So where would you be playing the 8 ball? Because I would think that you would play the 3 ball, maybe draw back a little bit so you can have a little bit of an angle on the 4, and kind of stun past the 12 for the position on the 6. The 2's got to go here, so if you play position on the 6, that means you have to come to the side rail and come back out for position on the 2. And what do? Do you just roll forward to play the 8 in the side pocket, or do you draw back to play the 6, 2, and the 8 into the corner pocket? Those are certainly possibilities. Septicon Warrior, you're saying 6, 2, 3, 4, 8? So that means we play the 6 ball like this, have the cue ball come off the rail like this, most likely have to draw off of the 2 ball to get position on the 3 to go here, get the that similar angle on the 4 ball so that way we can stun over for the 8. I like that. And then let's see here. Ryan Rep, you're saying you would do 3, 4, 6, 2, 8, but you want the 8 to go into the side pocket. So it looks like maybe Ryan and Jamal are on the same wavelength there. And I see another Michael Egbrecht. I hope I said that correctly. You're saying the same thing. Lonnie Rushing, this is one of my other locals again. He says 2, 4, 3, 6, 8. So I'm assuming that the 6 and the 8 are also going to go into the same pocket. These are all interesting. I really like the way all these work. Let me show you what I do. Because again, I don't consider there to be any right or wrong answer here. They're just better answers. Because I think all these patterns that everybody's putting up here, they're possible. There you can see, I started with the 6 ball. I have position on the 3, and I have position on the 2. All right, so looks like Septicon Warrior came up with the same pattern I did. Again, I'm not suggesting that my pattern is right. It's just that this is the pattern that I ended up seeing. It's because all of the other ones were good suggestions as well. Now you can see there, I kind of goofed up though on the 4 ball, right? This is where the run possibly could have broken down. I have position, but like I would clearly like to be like right here to be able to play the 8 ball. But what I would basically want to say at this point here, this is why I did what I did. Again, and it's not to say that other routes would have been wrong. When we look at the end pattern for the 2 ball or the 6 ball to be the key, for the 2 ball or the 6 to be the key ball, the possibilities of trying to draw them back so that 8 ball can go into the corner pocket that I played in means that there's a lot of difficult movement that has to happen at the end of the pattern. Now there is the possibility of rolling the ball in and playing the 8 into the side pocket as well. That is certainly a thing, but the only problem is, the only problem is this. Like this is the straight in line in order to be able to shoot. It's not perfectly straight, but this is the straight in line from side pocket to corner pocket. And the 8 ball's over here. So if I were to attempt to roll from the 2 or the 6, my cue ball would have to be somewhere right around here to make sure that I'm as straight as I would like to be, because I don't, correct me if I'm wrong, if anybody disagrees, but would any of y'all really want to try to back cut the 8 ball into the side pocket, even though the 13 ball protects you from scratching? Because it's certainly an option, right? if I was dead set on using the 2 or the 6 as the last ball, I would want to try to get as straight in with the 8 ball as I possibly can. And since I see how difficult it is to do that, that's why I ended up electing the pattern that I did. Because as long as I end up anywhere on this side of the 4 ball, the cue ball naturally goes over here, and and the 8 ball has a path over here. So what I'm basically saying is that the 2 and the 6 being at the end certainly is possible. I just consider it to be harder to move the cue ball at the end. So what I did was I put the harder shots up front to attempt to make easier shots at the end. And even though I did the pattern that I did, I still almost messed up shooting from the 4 to the 8. But what I'm saying is that's typically how I try to build my patterns, to where I might do some medium to difficult shots at the very beginning, so hopefully the rest of my shots afterwards are very simple, or as simple as they can be. But then all depending upon the layout of the table, sometimes it's going to be difficult shot after difficult shot after difficult shot. It just really depends. And then it also really just depends on my cue ball control. So I hope that makes sense. Travis Wilson says that he has a policy of no hero shots. A lot goes wrong when you're doing them. Not for me specifically, but my teammates in general. Yeah, I would agree. Now, there's a good pop break, but look what happens. Cue ball gets kicked in. Now, in APA, when you scratch on the break, your opponent will have cue ball in hand, but he has to shoot from behind the head string, and he can only shoot at balls that are past the head string. So he won't be shooting at the 1 ball. I think the 1 ball was either on or behind the head string, and he clearly won't shoot at this ball. I wasn't sure if the 7 ball was past the head string, but he can clearly shoot at any one of these up here except for the 8 ball, obviously, because you don't want to lose by shooting the 8 ball in. So the question would be is when you look at a layout like this, what set is everybody choosing? Are you going to choose solids or stripes? And why? What set are you choosing and why? Jamal likes stripes. Why do you like stripes? What compels you to want to choose stripes? Less movement on the cue ball. I like that. I really like this answer from Stan Turner. What the heck are we gonna do with the 2 ball if we do end up choosing solids? Right, the 2 ball is in a very difficult position, and it's going to require a lot of movement or possibly breaking out the 2 ball in order to be able to make it. Like clearly it goes here, but how do we get the cue ball right here in order to be able to shoot it? Right, and then the 5 ball maybe gives us an opportunity to do that, but the 5 ball has to be shot over here, which means we got to get our cue ball somewhere right around here. That gives us a possibility of doing it. Right, so that's why I would like stripes as well. I agree. I agree with the notion of stripes, and so did my opponent. But notice how the 9 balls moved. He attempted to shoot the 9 ball, and if I remember correctly, he overcut it and caught the short rail, since he had to go through the 2 and the 11. Right. So if I remember correctly, he had some sort of an approach angle like this to go in between the 2 and the 11 to be able to hit the 9 and make the 9 into the corner pocket. But the 9 ball caught the point, and this is where we're at right here. Now, after all that talk about the 2 ball, and we look at where the cue ball is at, well, I'm not shooting stripes because of where the 2 ball is at. I'm going to be starting with the 2 ball, since that's the ball that we already talked about, and I'm in position to be able to shoot it. I forgot, I did scratch on the break, so that's another inning. So since the 2 ball is the hardest ball on the table, I go ahead and shoot it all the way into the corner with enough top spin so that way I can get position on the 6. So now, from here, what's the next trouble ball that's on the table? I already like this notion that the 3 ball going into this pocket leads to the 5 ball going here because that's the only place it can go, right? I'm not going to try to shoot the 5 ball down here, but there's a catch to that one, Sensei Nate. There's a catch. Shoot the 6 ball. And look where I'm at. The camera angle doesn't really show it, but I have position on the 5. So why not go ahead and shoot it? And that way I can use the 3 or the 1, and those would be my backup shots. So I think from here I transition. I think from the 3 either to the 1 or the 7. I don't necessarily make it. I don't necessarily make. Why am I good? I don't necessarily remember. Is what I meant to say. And it looks like it's going to be the 7 ball. All right, so clearly I wanted to be able to shoot the 7 and get position on the 1 because I want to use the 4 ball to get to the 8. So I didn't get quite the position that I wanted on the 1 ball, so that means I have to back cut it. My cue ball is going to come to the side rail, and with the bottom right spin, I'm just going to try to pull it back to the other side. And here's where I assess this shot badly. What do I mean by that? Well, here I am looking at my next shot. Right? That clearly means I want to shoot the 8 ball into the side pocket here. So when I shoot this 4 ball, I'm thinking top left, right? I want to try to sink through the tangent line, hit the side rail, and then kind of just spin my way up here for a nice flat shot on the 8 ball. Watch what happens. Totally misjudged how I was going to transition from the 4 ball to the 8 ball. But I still end up landing right where Sensei Nate is suggesting. So there, a little lucky. I can certainly admit that. It didn't go exactly the way I wanted it to go, but I managed to get out. So here we are on the next rack. I did a pop break and got a break and run because rack number 2 was a break and run, and then that last rack I pop broke and scratched because the ball ends up getting kicked around by some other stuff. So let's see what this pop break does. The same freaking thing. All right, ball comes and hits the cue ball and knocks it into a pocket. But from here, we can see that when my opponent had ball in hand, it looks like he ran solids, and then look at the table. All right, so what are my issues? Well, we clearly have an issue here, and then we've got this issue here. So do I want to attempt to solve everything right now? Run, make some balls, break out clusters, and continue to run? That is certainly an option. It's not an option that I quite favor. That's why you're going to see me do what I do here. Actually, that scratch and the break is another inning. Fortunately, this is not so much of an issue because the 9 ball does go, and that means I can possibly break the 5 away from this 12 ball. So this is really the big issue right here. All right, so I play this safety. Now, I want to make it clear that when you see my cue ball roll forward, that's on purpose, right? Because how many of y'all would have played a stop shot? You look at this, the cue ball rolls forward and tucks where it's at, because had I played a stop shot, my opponent would have the opportunity to kick this way. Oh, let me go back. Had I played a stop shot and my cue ball would have been right here, my opponent has the opportunity to kick this way. I allow my cue ball to roll forward and land where it lands, so that way that option is taken out. His only option is to do this, and that's what he tried. But he, as you saw when I let the video play on, he ended up kicking it just a little too wide, because you see the 6 ball doesn't even move, and I do end up getting ball in hand. I think had he would have either would have hit the kick a little bit harder or kicked with a little bit of inside spin, it looked like he would have been able to hit it. If I remember correctly, because he barely missed the kick shot and barely missed clipping his 6 ball. But now that I've got ball in hand and the biggest problem of my layout is solved, I can go ahead and try to attack. Because I'm more confident at attacking this layout than I did when the 2 balls were tied up here. So I start with the 9 ball. And like I said, I'm just going to bump the cue ball into the 5. All right, and at that point, I have my options. I could have shot the 12. I could shoot this ball. I could shoot this ball. But now the whole table is solved. So now I just got to make sure I come up with some sort of pattern where I'm not moving my cue ball around as much. So that way it should be easier for me to do. Now, this was a little lucky as well because I kind of misjudged it. I was expecting for the cue ball to land right here. But you see, I clipped the 4, but it was okay that I ended up clipping the 4 because I still have a shot at the 13 ball. The 13 ball is the ball that I wanted to shoot next anyway. I just wasn't expecting to clip the 4. Now, from the 13 ball, this is where I'm going to place some low right and come 2 rails into these 3 right here. This ball, and this. Actually, all 4 of them. But since I have position on this ball, now I can come up with a pattern that is relatively easy. Very little movement on the cue ball, and watch what happens. Even though I did that, that was not intentional. It was the cue ball is supposed to be right here, but it doesn't matter. I can honestly say that was a mistake. I wasn't supposed to touch the 6 ball. The 8 ball does pass the 5, and I look and see the angle that's on the 10, so that makes the rest of this very simple. Push the cue ball to the rail, get almost or pretty flat on this ball. That way I can end up straight on the 8. And that puts me on the hill. So we talked about this before. What happens when I'm on the hill? Well, I pretty much try to end the set right away. So I try to do an 8 ball break here. Or I try to make the 8 ball on the break by hitting the ball that's in the second row. Look at the 8 ball. 8 ball will definitely move out of the rack. Now, this is the interesting part, and I wish I was able to showcase this. Let's look at the table. What do y'all pick? Y'all pick solids or stripes? Now, because I'm not going to be able to remember in great detail how it was done, but This is a dry break. My opponent is coming to the table, and what would y'all do here? Solids or stripes? Bree likes solids. Robert Allison likes stripes. I think we're going to get a pretty good 50-50 split on this one. Thomas likes stripes. And I don't think there's going to be a right or wrong answer here. James Newcomer likes solids. Bree thinks there's 4 stripes that are in trouble. Which ones are we referring to? Let's see, look at this. Like I said, it looks like it's a 50-50 split. My opponent ends up shooting solids. And what you end up seeing here is that when the transition occurs, we're in a completely different rack because my opponent ran out from there. He ran out from solids, and I would love to have been able to showcase the pattern that he did. I don't quite remember what it was, but it was still good. Now, if I remember correctly, though, my opponent broke here, and that means I should be on 5 innings, I think. And I am solids at this point. I think my opponent broke, made stripes, and it was like, what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then he makes a stripe afterwards, and then if I remember correctly, he ends up missing. So I come to the table, and I'm solids. So instantly, we have an issue, right? We've got a problem right here. The 6 ball and the 7 ball. So I got to figure out how am I going to be able to do it. Oh, holy crap. Eves, thank you so much for the $6 and 60, or no, actually it's $8.87 Canadian, which translates to $6.66 in US dollars. I really do appreciate that, bud. And saying congrats on 93,000. Like I said, I'm working very hard on trying to get to that 100,000. You know, so still doing live streams. I'm trying to do more recorded content for 2023. So yeah, we're just gonna have to see if I can get my last 7,000 here in 2023, and let's see how soon I can possibly get it. So really do appreciate the super chat, bud. So again, here we are with solids, and I got to figure out what the heck am I gonna do with the 7 and the 6 ball. Everything else is fine. I'm not worried about anything else. So what would y'all attempt to do here? Especially with the 6 ball. Or not with the 6 ball, because of the 6 ball. What would y'all try to do here? Right? I ended up misjudging that. I was supposed to make the 3, like I did, but what I was hoping was going to happen was the 3 would go in and the cue ball would do this and bump the 6 this way. That way I can possibly shoot the 6 in this corner. But instead, my cue ball comes a little wide, knocks the 7 into the 9, and knocks the 9 in, so now the 7 ball is at least makeable into the corner pocket as well. But I was really trying to be able to open up my 6. I just misjudged transitioning from the 3 into a 2-railer in order to be able to break out the 6. So now all my attention is on this 6 ball. Like, how do I get this 6 ball out? So if I remember correctly, I don't remember if it was this shot or the next shot. Like, I'm going to take a significant amount of time. This is where you can actually complain that I'm playing too slow at this point, when I really try to figure out how am I going to solve this. Now, I can clearly maybe play safe if I wanted to, right? My 6 ball is guarding that 12 ball pretty good. I don't necessarily have to try to run out from here, but I do try. So the first thing you see me look at is I'm considering shooting the 7 ball. I've got the bridge out, and I've got this much spin on the cue ball for me to try to do this. But I end up changing my mind because I don't like shooting with the bridge and using that much side spin. So what do? I go over to my table. And I get my extension out of my case. Predator cues have their own extension that attaches to the butt of the cue. So as soon as I come back, I'm going to go ahead and speed this up. There we go. So now with my extension on, I can reach and still try to do this shot. I've got a boatload of right spin on this cue ball. All right, and I hit the 6. The 6 comes off the rail, but it doesn't come out far enough. And so you're going to see me get down and look. There's like that much of a window. That much of a window that I can try to squeeze past. As you can see, I'm ducking down and looking at the 6. Like, the window is so freaking small. I would have to hit that 6 ball so perfect. Like, so there, what I'm doing there is I'm looking to see, like, can I even just take my cue and just shoot the 6 in? Because if I can't do that, then I'm certainly not going to be able to do it with the cue ball. It just makes the shot harder. So now I'm trying to figure out, well, how do I hit the 6 again? Is it possible for me to come up with a pattern where I can run into the 6 again? And I think this is where I take a little too much time, so I'm going to fast forward. You can see I looked at the 2 going into the side, looked at it again. I'm looking at the 5 ball, looking at the 4 ball. At this point, I start to settle. I think I ended up coming up with a pattern that I was comfortable trying. So shoot that. You see how much bottom spin I have on the ball, but really all I'm doing is a drag shot. I hit it so low, but I hit it soft enough to where the backspin will die out by the time it gets to the object ball. So that way it either turns into a sliding cue ball or it turns into a rolling cue ball. That's why the cue ball doesn't even really move all that much. Now, if I remember correctly, I was supposed to get position on the 4, and I was going to try to shoot the 4 into the side pocket and do that same maneuver that I did in an earlier rack, have the cue ball come up table and try to break out the 6. But I didn't land where I wanted to land. So now I try to do something a little bit different here using the 5 ball. Since I bumped into the 2, I bumped into the 4 ball, I've got no choice but to shoot the 2 into the side pocket because y'all saw me measure that up earlier. So what do y'all think I can do from here? Well, I can try to cut the 2 in, have the cue ball come over here, and then try to break this apart. So I've got top right spin again. Shot top right to get where I'm at, and I've got top right again to see if I can actually break out the 6. And I failed. Not only did I fail, I got a little kind of fortunate that this ball ends up right here because it at least hopefully would prevent my opponent from running out if I allow him back to the table. But now, that small window, that very, very small window that I said that I have, I'm about to try it. That's all I can do. That's all I can do at this point. So I'm just going to try to gently roll the ball into the 6 and try to basically slide right through that window. But you see, I hit the 12, so it doesn't matter. So we can see here that 4 stripes are still on the table, so my opponent wasn't able to make a ball at this point. So what do y'all do here? Who shoots the 6 and who shoots the 4? And clearly, I probably just gave away what I'm going to do. because I end up shooting the 6. I put right spin on the cue ball because I kind of want to kill the outbound angle off of the rail here because I don't want to risk running into the 13 ball. Now, how many of y'all have seen my center table drill, my 2 center table drill video? Because that's essentially what this shot is. No, it's not the exact layout of the drill where, you know, I had a ball here, a ball here, and a ball here, and a ball here, to where when I shoot any of these balls in, I want to land near the center of the table. But when you look at the angle that I have on the 4 ball, that's the same exact thing that I want to do. Hit the rail and come up over here towards the center of the table so that way I can have some sort of shot on the 8 ball. Here's a clear benefit of why doing drills can be a good thing, because how often will the drill pop up? Well, it happened to pop up on this night. I hit this with a little bit of top left, so I can try to pocket the 4 ball into the corner pocket, have the cue ball come off the short rail, spin back towards the middle of the table, and that way I have a cut shot on the 8. And there we go. I was able to take the match down 5-1. Now, this opponent here, I end up having conversations with him all the time about different ways to play. And I think usually the most common thing I usually end up defaulting to as to what to say is making sure that your plan makes it all the way to the end. In other words, like when we talked about on the first rack, I had talked about how, like, you know, I'm thinking, what is my opponent going to do with that 9 ball? Right, and he wasn't able to solve it. So that would almost tell me that if we were to look at the layout of the table, which I don't have the footage to be able to show you, we would probably want to try to come up with a different pattern in order to be able to not end up in the predicament that he ended up in, to where now I'm forcing him to chase after that ball. Yes, I did get a little lucky with some of the safeties that I played, but still, I'm playing with a strategy in mind to where unless I make a mistake, I'm not going to be giving my opponent a shot as much as I possibly can. The only time I'm going to let my opponent come to the table is when I know they're going to have some sort of difficult shot, because I'm going to play some sort of safety. Reese Lewis, you want to know how old I am? I just recently turned 42 back in December. So the whole thing, I think, evolves around pretty much what you hear me say on every one of these review videos. How much planning goes into your run out every time you come to the table? When you come to the table, do you even tell yourself, I can run the table from here, and I have a high probability of being able to run the table from here? Or do you tell yourself, man, I don't know if I can run this table, but I'm certainly going to try. And whenever you try running the table, you end up messing up and just selling that rack to your opponent. Lance Piper, I hope I pronounced that correctly. Look you so much for subscribing to the channel. You know, so a lot of times I try to convince a lot of players to where if you can honestly look at the layout of the table and go, this is a really difficult layout for me to run, regardless of what your skill set is or what your skill level is. The moment you say to yourself, this is really difficult, if you can be honest with yourself and know that you're probably not going to be able to run the table, well, then you should know when and where are you going to stop, because you know you're going to allow your opponent to come to the table. But when you allow your opponent to come to the table, you want to make sure that you allow them to come to the table under your condition. And by doing that, you want to be able to make sure that you're giving them some sort of a difficult shot. A very thin cut shot, a bank shot. You can try to hide the cue ball like I did in the first match. All you want to do is make sure that you're not allowing your opponent to shoot a ball directly into a pocket. And sometimes you might even have to allow them to do that. And what I mean by that is if you have to leave the cue ball in a place where they have the ability to shoot a ball into a pocket, like straight to a pocket, and I don't mean a straight in shot, well, then you want to try to put the cue ball on the rail and cut off access to the cue ball and only allow them to use some form of topspin, because at least you've made the shot more difficult than it could be if the cue ball was somewhere in the middle of the table. So to me, it's all a matter of knowing what you can and cannot do on the table. You know you can't run out, don't try to run out. Try to pick a spot where you can try to, leave the cue ball safely and give your opponent a difficult shot. Make your opponent earn the victory and not accidentally give them a victory by running the table, messing up, and now your opponent has a wide open table to be able to run. So I hope that makes sense, everybody, and hope that that bit of advice can at least help out. Okay, so that's pretty much going to wrap things up for tonight. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to play APA tomorrow. We do have a scheduled match tomorrow. It'll hopefully be another video that I can collect, because typically I try to get 2 videos before I do this live stream. But it's possible we may have to reschedule, weather permitting, because even APA tonight, Tuesday night, APA was canceled because the pool hall ended up closing because, like I said, the roads are dangerous right now. And from what I can tell, it looks like it's going to get worse. It's getting colder. So we'll just have to wait and see. So not entirely sure when my next live stream of this is going to be, but I certainly have a couple of recorded video ideas coming up, and I still have some straight pool to play. So does anybody have any questions they'd like to ask before I go ahead and sign off? I'll give you about another minute or 2 to see if any questions come in. You know what? Oh, okay. I have to apologize to everybody on Facebook. I messed up on something, and no wonder I was not. So let's see. Lyle Cornish, I see that you're on Facebook. Lewis Blackwood, I think you're one of my locals. Dustin Dover, everybody that's been on Facebook, that's been commenting on Facebook, I do apologize. I set up something incorrectly. Is to where all of my chats from multiple platforms are supposed to funnel into one location, and I messed up something. So it's no wonder I haven't seen any Facebook chats into the funneling point. I only see my YouTube chats. I know where I messed up on, and I do apologize. So I don't want y'all to think that I was ignoring y'all. I just messed up my setup and just haven't been able to see your chats. But when I go and look, I can clearly see that all of y'all are here. So thank you so much, at least, for watching on Facebook as well. Oh, yes. Eves, you notice that I'm coughing much less. Yes, I'm finally recovered from when I have the flu. I still have a cough, but the cough is mainly from post nasal drip, because I just have screwed up sinuses from numerous sinus infections that I've had throughout my lifetime. So occasionally I have the where I have to clear my throat kind of coughing, but I'm now fully recovered and hopefully won't be getting sick anytime soon. Bree, you're asking, do I know what the percentage of success is on the 8 on the break hitting the second ball? I'm really glad that you asked that question. I don't have any hard, fast statistics. I do believe Dr. Dave might have some on his website. And I honestly wanted to try to do a video, and I may still do it, where I would take a template rack, so that way I can have a perfect rack. Because I know there's some stipulation to where you can increase the percentage of making the 8 ball on the break if there's a gap in the 3rd row. So if you're breaking on your right side of the table, you would want there to be a gap between the 8 ball and the ball that's the left of the 8 ball, and that'll help allow the 8 ball to go into the side pocket. Or if you're breaking on the left, you'd want the gap to be on the ball that's to the right of the 8 ball, so that way you can try to get the 8 ball to go into the other side pocket. But the video that I'm talking about, that I was talking about doing, and I just never bothered to try to do it, is to be able to break 100 times using the second row break. 50 on one side and 50 on the other. And calculate how many times could I make the 8 ball on the break. It's and even 100 breaks is a very small sample size. Like I would think maybe 1,000 breaks would probably be a decent sample size to get like a good percentage calculation. But I'm not going to do 1,000 breaks. That would take way too long. But I think I can try to make a video where I attempt to do 100 breaks, but I want to make sure that I practice the breaks. And what I mean by practicing the breaks is I want to be able to hit the breaks consistently, the same speed, contact the second ball roughly around the same spot every single solitary time. Make sure that I'm hitting the cue ball the same way every single solitary time, and then just happen to see how the balls come apart and see where all the balls track. But yeah, if you check Dr. Dave's website, I do believe he's got some statistics on how often the 8 ball is actually made on the break. But it's low. It's a low percentage shot, but the second ball break is at least still a higher percent chance of making the 8 on the break than a head-on break would give you. There's a possibility that you can make the 8 ball on the break with a head-on break. I've done it a couple of times, but it's still lower than when you do a second ball break. Roland Star, you say you hate to play bar leagues because they have the wooden racks and because that happens a lot. 8 on the breaks. Well, the 8 on the breaks happen a lot in bar leagues because, yeah, you're not using template racks, and a lot of times there's going to be gaps in the rack. And I would have to say most of the time, the gaps that are in the rack are not done on purpose. Like, why would your opponent rack for you, leave a gap in the rack so you can win on the break if you're playing in the APA league, right? Those gaps are accidental. So if it's rack your own, and you're gapping the rack, Eve said it earlier that gaps in the rack is cheating, right? Because you can manipulate how the balls are going to spread. But at least with a template rack, all of the balls are frozen together, and there are no gaps in the rack. Then that means you're going to get a consistent break every time. So it's a matter of finding that sweet spot to where can you hit and be able to hit and be able to make the 8 ball on the break, and basically have to rely on environmental conditions and rely on physical conditions on hitting the cue ball correctly, hitting the second ball correctly with the same amount of speed, and how will the balls gear off of one another to possibly make the 8 on the break, whether it goes into the respected side pocket that you would expect it from, or expect it to, or just randomly get kicked around and fall into another pocket. Okay, let's see here. Oh, Travis, you'd like to see me make that video of me breaking 100 8-ball racks? We'll see. Like, it was an idea that I actually had quite some time ago. I just never bothered to really attempt to film it. But we'll see. I may go ahead and still attempt to film it, but who knows? Who knows? Just have to wait and see. All right, so I think I'm going to go ahead and cut it from here. I want to thank everybody for being here, especially those on Facebook. I really do. I really feel terrible that it feels like I neglected the Facebook chat. I just didn't see the Facebook chat. I actually have Facebook open, but I have it opened in a separate window, and I didn't set up that window correctly to where the chats funnel into my aggregate chat, where I currently see all the YouTube chats. I just don't see any of the Facebook chats in my aggregate chat window that I'm using here. So I do apologize. I did not ignore y'all, but I do take the responsibility that I did not set up my stream appropriately to where I could see all the chats in one location. So I certainly want to thank everybody that was watching on Facebook. As I mentioned before, if you at least please give the stream a thumbs up or like the stream on Facebook. Maybe share it to your Facebook profile so that way your friends and family can hopefully discover who I am and learn how to play pool from me. And then maybe share it onto your favorite pool groups. If you're on YouTube and you haven't done so already, please give the stream a thumbs up. Consider subscribing to the channel. We've already saw that I did have a couple of people subscribe to the channel, so I really do appreciate that. Help me get to 100,000 subscribers so that way I can go buy some amazing pool products and give them away to my lucky followers, because that's pretty much what I have in mind. I just don't know what I'm going to get yet. It's most likely going to be some cues, might even be some cases. I don't know. I haven't quite figured that part out yet, but I know I'm going to do it when it happens. But I need y'all's help getting me there. So whether it's liking what you see right now, help sharing my stuff around so that way people can discover me, and let's get there together. I think it'll be a lot of fun. And then once I get 100,000, we just got to keep climbing from there. It never ends. I don't plan on going away for quite a long time, so we'll just have to see what happens. So with all that in mind, have a good night, everybody, and we'll see you later.